Good morning, first graders. So this week we are going to be focusing on comparing and contrasting settings. Can anybody remind me again what comparing and contrasting means? What does it mean? Good job. It means finding the similarities and differences between two stories. Can anybody remind me what setting is? Yell it real loud so I can hear you. You're right, good job. Setting is where and when a story takes place. It could be the physical setting, it could be the weather, it could be the time, the place you're in, all that kinds of stuff. So we're going to do very similar to what we did last week, and we are going to read one story today, and we're going to come up with a list for our setting in our notebook. And then tomorrow we'll do the same with another story, and then we'll compare them. Okay, so today we're going to be reading The Keeping Quilt. Okay, I try to get the pictures nice and close so you guys can see them. This illustrations in this book are amazing. The Keeping Quilt. When my great-grandma Anna came to America, she wore the same thick overcoat and big boots she had worn for farm work. But her family weren't dirty farmers anymore. In New York City, her father's work was hauling things on a wagon, and the rest of the family made artificial flowers all day. Everyone was in a hurry, and it was so crowded, not like in a back home Russia. But all the same, it was like their home, and most of their neighbors were just like them. So her family came from Russia, okay, and they're in America now. So our setting could be America and how it's crowded. So be thinking of these things as we're reading. When Anna went to school, English sounded to her like pebbles dropping into the shallow water. Shh, shh, shh. In 6 months, she was speaking English. Her parents almost never learned, so she spoke English for them, too. The only thing she had left on her of back home Russia were her dress and the babushka she liked to throw into the air when she was dancing. And her dress was getting too small. After her mother had sewn her a new one, she took her old dress and babushka. Then from a basket of old clothes, she took Uncle Vladimir's shirt, Aunt Helvela's nightdress, and an apron of Aunt Natasha's. We'll make a quilt to help us always remember home, Anna's mother said. It'll be like having the family in back home Russia dance around us at night. And so it was. Anna's mother invited all the neighborhood ladies. They cut out animals and flowers from the scraps of clothing. Anna kept the needle threaded and handed them to the ladies when they needed them. The border of the quilt was made of Anna's babushka. On Friday nights, Anna's mother would say the prayers that started the Sabbath. The family ate challah and chicken soup. The quilt was the tablecloth. Anna grew up and fell in love with great-grandpa Sasha. To show he wanted to be her husband, he gave Anna a gold coin, a dried flower, and a piece of rock salt, all tied into a linen handkerchief. The gold was for wealth, the flower was for love, the salt was so their lives would have flavor. She accepted the hanky, and they were engaged. Under the wedding huppah, Anna and Sasha promised each other love and understanding. After the wedding, the men and women celebrated separately. When my grandma Carl was born, Anna wrapped her daughter in the quilt to welcome her warmly into the world. Carl was given a gift of gold, flour, salt, and bread. Gold was so she would never know poverty, a flower so she could always know love, salt so her life would always have flavor, and bread so that she would never know hunger. Carl learned to keep the Sabbath and to cook and clean and do washing. Married you'll be someday, Anna told Carl. And again, the quilt became a wedding huppah, this time for Carl's wedding to Grandpa George. Men and women celebrated together, but they still did not dance together. In Carla's wedding bouquet was a gold coin, bread, and salt. Carly and George moved to a farm in Michigan, and Great Grandma Anna came to live with them. The quilt once again wrapped a new little girl, Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen called Anna Lady Grandma. She had grown very old and was sick a lot of the time. The quilt kept her legs warm. On Anna's 98th birthday, the cake was a kulich, a rich cake with raisins and candied fruit in it. When Great Grandma Anna died, prayers were said to lift her soul to heaven. My mother, Mary Ellen, was now grown up. When Mary Ellen left home, she took the quilt with her. When she became a bride, the quilt became her huppah. For the first time, friends who were not Jews came to the wedding. My mother wore a suit, but in her bouquet were gold, bread, and salt. The quilt welcomed me, Patricia, into the world, and it was a tablecloth for my first birthday party. At night, I would trace my fingers around the edges of each animal on the quilt before I went to sleep. I told my mother stories about the animals on the quilt. She told me whose sleeve she had made the horse, and whose apron had made the chicken, and whose dress had made the flowers, and whose babushka went around the edge of the quilt. The quilt was a pretend cape when I was a bull ring, for sometimes a tent in the steaming Amazon jungle. At my wedding to Enzo Mario, men and women danced together. At my banquet, or in my bouquet, were gold, bread, and salt, and a sprinkle of wine, so I'd always know laughter. 20 years ago, I held Tracy Denise in the quilt for the first time. Someday she will too. Leave the home and take the quilt with her. The end. Okay, so everybody should be thinking about the setting in our book. While you're thinking about that, I want you to grab your notebook and go ahead and open to the next blank page that you have. Okay? Next blank page. Put your name right at the top. You know the drill by now. Put the date. Today is 3-23-20. And we can write setting day 1. Okay, I want you to do that quickly. Do all that right at the top of your page, nice and neatly, so we can see it. Okay, that's how we'll know that this is the assignment for this book. Okay, and you can go ahead and write the title, The Keeping Quilt. And go ahead and write that quickly. All right, so everybody should have the Keeping Quilt written at the top of their page. So now I want you to think about the setting. So we found out at the beginning that they were in America and they were from Russia. Would you consider that a setting? Is that somewhere this story takes place? Yell it nice and loud. Yep, you're right. So why don't you write, they are in America. They came from Russia. Awesome. Okay, so that's our setting. They're an American. They came from Russia. Okay, so I want you to think, did you think they really spoke English when they got there? No, you're right. They didn't. So they had to learn English. That can be part of the setting because that tells me that the people in America speak English. Okay, so they learn to speak English. Okay, so your setting can also be the family structure, how they live their lives. Okay, that can be all part of a setting. So I want you to think about that while you're making your list. Okay, so what's the big thing about this story that kept going through all these different generations. What was it called? What was our main story about? It's about a what? Yell it nice and loud. A what? Yep, you're right. It's about that quilt. So we can write a quilt was created by clothing of ancestors. Good job. So keep brainstorming different ideas, and I'll put different ideas in the comments so that you can see them, okay, and get your mind thinking. I want you to keep creating a list of the setting, anything that goes along to the setting with this story. We're going to use it tomorrow to compare it to another book. Keep up the great work.